out of the ordinary insights. Brought to you by Investec Specialist Bank.
Welcome back. You're watching Captains of Industry here on CNBC Africa. I'm speaking to Paul Hinks, the Chairman of the Corporate Council on Africa. Let's go back to the Corporate Council on Africa. Where do you see the organization 5 years down the line?
First of all, I hope that in 5 years' time will be a lot bigger membership, that it will consist of a lot of African companies as well as many more from the United States, and that it will be really the leading organization, perhaps in the world, that promotes trade and investment with Africa. We all know that there are other countries, Asia, Brazil, India, that have shown a lot of interest in Africa, and
but it's not a competition between China and American investment. I see you've been quoted as saying that.
No, it's not a competition. No, it's not a competition. But the point I'm trying to make is, and I think I tried to make when I made that statement, is that America has been behind the curve. The Chinese have taken advantage for the last 20 years, taken advantage of the situation, and they've invested all over the
They've been
continent.
trailblazing on the continent.
They've been trailblazing on the continent, and they've done some very good things. I've been flying around Tanzania last week, and I see roads that were never there before. Beautiful roads all over the country, tar, all done by Chinese firms. So, the notion that the Chinese have brought labor from China to do the work, and some of that is it's not accurate. There are a lot of Chinese people there, but there's a lot of Chinese investment, and I see the work being done by locals, not by all Chinese, as I keep getting told.
In the Corporate Council on Africa, is there a sector bias when it comes to your membership?
A sector bias?
A sector bias.
No.
So are these power companies, infrastructure companies, do they comprise the bulk of your membership, or is it across the board?
No, it's across
Financial,
the board.
industrial?
Yeah, and in fact we've expanded it. We have sectors. It has a sector approach now. It didn't have until this year. But we have sectors such as health, finance. We have a sector called capacity building, education and training, where we're trying to get universities and colleges, vocational training centers in the United States to partner with colleges in Africa. We have ICT, we have infrastructure, we have energy, which is oil, gas and power. So there's a lot of different sectors. It covers pretty much everything. And where it doesn't, it slots into one of the others, or sometimes across all of them. We're also having a media and sport sector created this year.
You talk about Nigeria as the hottest, I don't want to misquote you, but as a hot potential investment destination. Is Nigeria one of the key focal points of the Corporate Council on Africa? Or do you find inquiries from your members to Central Africa, DRC, or are we focused in Nigeria?
It's actually the other way around. Nigeria's potential today is probably the largest on the continent.
From a consumer, 170 million consumers.
160 plus, 165 million or something. So you have a huge potential there. There are companies, South African companies like MTN. MTN is the success story of Nigeria. They've done a fantastic business there. The problem is that US business is nervous of Nigeria. And because of all the...
Because of the violent crime, corruption.
Because of the historic corruption, the bad reputation that Nigeria has for some reason earned itself, people are nervous about doing business in Nigeria. What I'm telling people, as the chairman of the Corporate Council in Africa, and as the chief executive of Symbion Power, who now have an investment in Nigeria, I'm telling them, whatever it may have been 20 years ago, or even 10 years ago, it is very different today.
But it's still a tough operating environment. When you go to Lagos, you have got serious infrastructure constraints just from a road perspective. And that's a reality.
That is a reality.
Lagos.
That is a reality of Lagos, and it's a reality of many other places in Africa. The infrastructure is poor. When you look at Lagos, you wonder how they're ever going to be able to fix it. Sure, it's not South Africa. What I'm saying is that the opportunities for companies, whether from the US or from South Africa, there are opportunities, particularly in our sector, which is power, where they've been suffering terribly. There are great opportunities. There are opportunities in many other things at the moment. So,
what about property rights? That's another concern. And again, I addressed it recently with President Jonathan of Nigeria, saying one of the key deterrents to foreign direct investment in Nigeria is uncertainty around property rights. Does that concern you?
it hasn't concerned us. What we've done is, in fact, we're partners with Tony Elumelu.
Heirs Holdings.
Heirs Holdings, who Tony was also the former CEO of United
UBA,
Bank for Africa.
which is where I initially met him.
Tony's our partner, and we're there to build power plants. We're in the privatization, or you probably know that the privatization is almost at its end at the moment. We're in that, and we're looking to build greenfield power plants. We're also looking to participate in the construction of the transmission network in
So can you navigate your way through uncertain property rights through the joint venture that you referred to in the beginning
Correct.
of the
That's
discussion?
what I believe. Yes, that's what I believe.
Other challenges that you've faced in country, perhaps not just Nigeria, but you've been, as you say, roaming the continent since 1980. You must have seen some very interesting elements or stories around the continent.
Yeah, I think everybody will tell you that in most places, I mean, I don't think South Africa is you can talk about South Africa in the same light as some of the other countries, is that the bureaucracy often frustrates everybody. Trying to get simple decisions made. People don't want to make decisions because, in fact, what I see today is so many allegations of corruption. You go to the Tanzanian or the Nigerian or the Ghanaian newspapers and you read, and there's allegations of corruption against everybody every day. I think that stifles getting the government officials to make decisions in the first place. So I think the frustration of getting simple decisions made and the effect that has on development and projects, that's what I find the biggest frustration. Having said that, having worked in places such as Asia, Iraq, Middle East, I think that being in Africa, I think Africans are the nicest people that exist on the planet, and it's a pleasure dealing with them. So we see ourselves as if there's any way that we can do business in various countries in Africa and we can help move Africa forward in our own small way. That's what we would like to do.
In your opinion, what is the key to fast-tracking Africa? So beyond the regulation and the red tape, what other moves would you like to see, be it government, private sector? What news would you be able to go back to the Corporate Council on Africa and say some huge changes happening on the continent? Here it is in black and white.
I am doing exactly that. Everywhere I speak, I was with President Jonathan last September in New York, and in fact he asked me to speak to the audience there about what I had seen in Nigeria. I tell everybody that doing business in Africa today is a lot different than it was 20 years ago or 10 years ago. So I don't think that there's any specific thing that I would say could change overnight. I don't think anything can change overnight. I believe that what I'm seeing today is much better governance. I see, and I know many heads of state. I know many of the heads of state in Africa, and they impress me. They're good people who want their countries to do better.
As a matter of interest, have you looked at Rwanda and the turnaround story that we've seen in Rwanda? Do you have an operation in Rwanda?
No, but we are looking at Rwanda, and we've met with
Paul Kagame.
I've met President Kagame, and I've met the Rwanda Development Board, and I mean that's just I was visiting Rwanda during the genocide.
What a remarkable turnaround story since the genocide.
You know, you only need to drive from the airport into town to see what an amazing place Rwanda is today. Every street light works. It's it's fabulous.
Symbion Power,
Yeah.
your footprint. Where do you see, now I've asked you where you see the Corporate Council on Africa 5 years from now, where do you see Symbion Power from now? And is there potential to diversify, for instance, into agriculture, which is another gaping hole on the continent?
The Corporate Council in Africa has an agriculture section. There's great interest in the United States in the agricultural potential in Africa. Symbion Power will not get into agriculture per se. However, what we're doing at the moment is in Tanzania we're building biomass power plants. We're currently negotiating in Malawi to build biomass power plants. And for the biomass, we grow the biomass specifically for the power plant. So in Tanzania we're using bamboo. So we grow bamboo. We then create smallholders and we train them up how to grow the bamboo. They sell the bamboo to the power plant in pellets, and the bamboo then is turned into electricity. Just by way of example, a 5 megawatt power plant we're going to build in Kigoma on Lake Tanganyika needs about 3,000 acres, and we believe we will employ something like 1,200 people will get jobs from that. So it's a good way of providing cleaner electricity than diesel, which is what they have today because they're off-grid, and you get 1,200 people jobs. And today one of the biggest problems is the ticking time bomb, which is the youth unemployment in Africa. So we're hoping that's a win-win. We build a power plant, we sell electricity, they get jobs, and the way the economics work is the cost of electricity from a diesel power plant in a place like Kigoma may be 50 cents per kilowatt hour. We're selling it at what they call a feed-in tariff rate, which is about 25 cents per kilowatt hour.
We're almost out of time, but what do you want your personal legacy to be?
I would just hope that I can put something back into Africa, having spent 33 years now working in the continent, and it was my first experience outside. I used to live in the UK, I live in the United States for the last 8 years, but it was my first overseas experience when I was a young man. And I would just hope that today, with much more experience behind me and many more connections, that I can do things which are good for Africa, good for the continent overall.
Paul, thanks so much for your time.
Right.
I've been speaking to Paul Hinks, the chairperson of the Corporate Council on Africa and the CEO of Symbion Power.